it's Mary Alice, and we're on the Hair Voyage podcast. It's been a bit for me, but we are back, and I am interviewing one of my favorite people. Her name is Kim Swisher, and she's a licensed social worker. She works in the child welfare system in Alaska, and she's so much more than just that title, but that is what we're going with today. And I'll let Kim add to that because she's going to share a lot about her passions and her work in this podcast with us as it relates to the beauty industry and the work that I do. And, please join us for this conversation. But welcome. Thank you for being here, Kim.
Thank you, Mary Alice. It's so nice to be here. I know that you and I've had a lot of discussions about how things in the beauty industry sort of overlap with the work that I do as a social worker. And so I'm excited to talk about that with you today.
Yes.
I've been working in the field of child welfare, the field of social work in Alaska since the late 1990s, a lot of work with families. And that's really evolved into a passion about dynamics in the workplace. So I'm going to be sharing some of my insights about how that plays out. And we'll see if any of the listeners see the crossover with the beauty industry.
Yes. Oh, yes. We're going to put some pieces together for you guys. But, this podcast is about mentorship and skill sharing. And Kim has been that for me in my life. And someone else has referred to you on other podcasts as the Brene Brown of working with child welfare, but I know you personally in my life for being just a phenomenal woman and a phenomenal mentor. And thank you, because that's partly how I've gotten here.
Thank you for that. I know I've had a couple of people describe me as the Brene Brown of child welfare, and it's very it's a little embarrassing, but also very sweet. Like that's such a nice compliment.
So like when I heard it, I'm like, oh yes, this is it. Like I know what that means. And now we get to share it to the world a little bit about how phenomenal you are. And that's just another point. It's like, this is why, having diverse mentors, because at first when we met, I wasn't like, oh, here's the crossover.
Yeah.
But, years later, we've had so many different conversations. You've helped me process so much of my journey and just witness so much of the things that we're going to be talking about along the way. And it comes together. And so having mentors that are in different fields or different places or different stages of life or perspectives, that's partly why this is so important, because everything is connected. Yeah. And so we found some connections, but I think the first thing is, can we introduce I've decided along the evolution of this business that what I'm truly passionate about is creating systems change. Yeah. And I didn't really know what that was when I first started. And now part of this clarity is getting excited about like that concept. So you'll be more articulate and talking about like what exactly is systems or system changes. Like, what does that mean to you in your world?
Yeah. So systems change is something that I am dealing with on a regular basis. So I've moved out of working directly with kids and families, children and families, into more systems work. And so I've been a part of implementation of large system change in large organizations in a couple of different places around Alaska. And so when we think about systems change, what we're really talking about is how all the parts and pieces of that system kind of come together as a whole, right? So if you think about like a family system, you've got your mom, your dad, your mom, your dad, you got your kids, and they're all part little subsystems of a larger system. And the same is true for your workplace. The same is true for your community, the organization, the industry. And so when there's a change in one part of a system, it impacts and influences change in other parts of that system. And I think we see that in a lot of different ways, right? Like when an organization embraces a commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? That changes how that system interfaces with its community and its employees. Or when a community, takes a stand and says, we're going to do something about ensuring that children are safe and cared for and supported, then it changes the dynamics of the community system. So system change is really just a way of thinking about how we're all organized. So like in the beauty industry system is made up of individual beauty professionals that come together towards a common theme or goal, right?
The work.
The work.
Yeah.
And so when you talk about shifts in the system, what you're talking about is small steps that are going to lead to big change. And it's like one of my favorite passion areas, because I work in a field that has a lot of secondary traumatic effects on the people that work there. And so you're always looking for ways for that system to be more supportive, holistic, supporting the helpers, because there's a lot of dynamics that can play out that you kind of haul into your system that you work in, your industry, that are really kind of rooted in your own upbringing, in your family of origin. And so you see that play out in the workplace, or you can see it play out. And so talking about that kind of openly, I think is healthy, because it opens communication.
Even just having that like concept in my mind, I've noticed over the last few years, like having so much more compassion for other problems that I haven't understood in the past, and realizing, oh, like, well, here's the impacts of like, if that's happening in that system, A, B, and C. Like you start to see everything in this like more interconnected way. And that's how I started to view the beauty industry, and like, my business in the same kind of light, where it's like, okay, I entered this because from my own personal experiences, right, where I was like, why is this happening? And then also the side of things that you really love, right? And I think in systems it's similar, where it's like, most systems are brought together by something that they love: family, work, whatever. Even like a bike, you think of a system and it's like it's brought together for functionality. So it's like there's always this driving force. And then in beauty, I was realizing that like, okay, there's two sides of things, right? Like and I kind of came to this concept that like the back end of beauty is broken. And it's because it's like everybody loves, when you say, what do you love about the beauty industry? Everybody loves their client work. Everybody loves that part of things. And same with, I think, in social work. But it gets complicated when it's like we come to the beauty industry because we all love the experience of feeling beautiful. We love connecting with people. Clients make the beauty industry work because it's that part is easy. The passion, that's where the passion lies. And then when we don't have the support on the back end, that's when the bike is no longer the bike is losing some gears, or wheels going flat, whatever.
It's true though. It's so true. And I think that's a really good analogy, because I think it's the same in social work. You have a passion, you want to help, you want to be a part of solutions, you want to work towards a common vision or mission in whatever field of practice you're in. It doesn't matter if it's with children or families or the elderly, and you're driven by that passion. And then the things that weigh you down are the things outside of your control, and typically the things that are happening in your workplace that are annoying or difficult to understand. And so you hear that a lot. Like, I love working with families. I can't stand working for this agency. I love working with kids. This agency though is very difficult because the people who run it don't understand what we really actually need to be doing with kids and families. And I imagine there's a lot of parallels in the beauty industry about the running of the business side and the actual hands-on practice, the art.
Absolutely. And I think that was like a huge aha moment. So, and that it makes sense whenever you're creating something or you're in your own work, and then you start asking questions, right? And that happens just in the nation in general. We're in this always constant process of like asking questions and being like, why? But so for me, on this journey of building Hair Voyage and just trying to have a different felt experience, I realized that what I was actually building is a family system for an industry that doesn't have parents.
Well, and so Mary Alice, when you have described this to me before, I totally get it, right? Because humans are wired for connection. It's just biologically what we're driven to do is to connect. And so when we're able to connect around a common vision, purpose, passion, we want to be in it with others, right? And so we often we look for a home, so to speak, where we get to work on our passion together. Like, and you'll hear this in some of the most functional workplaces. Like, they're like family. We're like a big family. We care for one another. We nurture one another. We come together. But like in all families, there's also a shadow side to the family dynamics where maybe we've got a subsystem of like siblings that aren't getting along, or we've got some dynamics playing out because one part of the family is unhappy with another part of the family, and that can happen and play out in the workplace. And so this idea that you were talking about of like asking why, it's like a primary part of being in any system with other humans is to remain curious and open to understanding from another person's point of view. And that's like a tenet in social work, is like tapping into your own empathy, where you're able to say, your experience is just as valid as my experience. I'm going to seek to understand through your lens. I can't be in your eyes. I can't be in your shoes. I can't know what that's like, but I'm going to tap into something inside me that I can feel something similar. So if you've experienced grief, I can tap into something that I've experienced regarding grief. That's a human connection. We carry those things into the workplace. And so a lot of dynamics will play out in our interactions with people in the workplace. One of the things that I found when I was younger is I often ended up in work environments where I had very controlling bosses, which was interesting to me, like, because I'm a pretty free spirit and very independent. And I'd be like, how do I keep ending up in these controlling environments? And I just had a moment of clarity where I was like, you know what? My parents were really controlling. Am I just seeking the thing that's known? Like, am I just putting myself in environments that I know, even if it's the good, the bad, and the ugly? It's that I know it. So I'm gravitating towards the known, even if it's not that great. And you have to ask yourself sometimes, like, am I bringing my own family stuff into my workplace or into my environment? And I think sometimes we are.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and then it's like, so within beauty, there's like the old system of whatever the beauty industry's narrative has been. And then there's also your own personal family history that you're, attachment styles, everything that you're working with. And then, so there is just so much psychology in beauty. Like, beauty is derived from culture. It is like, people will say, as a kind of a joke, but it's like, no, that's real. This is a thing that we're constantly interacting and serving humans and trying to help humans express, like, of course, that this is so complex, And so when we're looking at workplaces, it's not only, yes, we're already working with our own stuff. And then now we're in this really interesting phase where this new era of beauty, where people are actually talking about the old stories of the old beauty industry. And the old beauty industry did use this family dynamic as a way to hold people instead of empower people with this closeness and this, like, maybe it started off as this like wholesome concept, but from what we know of the history of the beauty industry, there's deep patriarchal roots, and that really wasn't the motive of most of these messages. It wasn't about creating environments that everyone in the family system was functioning to their highest and equal abilities with freedom and empowerment.
Absolutely. And I think you're seeing that in a lot of different industries where we're identifying that, like, old mechanisms of patriarchy are no longer serving us. Like, they probably didn't serve us back then, but that's what we had, right? But building a system where people have a voice at the table of how, let's say, a salon is run, or a voice in choosing their own mentoring or their own education, instead of just like, no, this is what we provide.
Shameless plug.
I didn't even mean to do that, but like in my environment, like, like you go through, this is your training and this is what it looks like, but trying to be open to the worker's experience, where they say, I need a little bit of this, or I need a little bit of that. Like, what would well round me as a professional would be something along these lines, like having a voice in that, right?
Mhm.
And that's not the old social work system either.
Mm.
And the thing that I really like about this discussion, to be honest, is that when we think about building equity or inclusion, or people just having a different voice in their work, there's so many things that we have to do different, right? We have to like slow down. We have to open our ears. We've got to listen, and we have to provide a space where people actually feel they can have their voices heard, right?
Mhm.
And the thing that I love about the idea of mentoring, I've had so many great mentors in my life, and not all of them have been social workers or in the human service field even, is that they reminded me of my value, and that my voice mattered, right? Like that I had something to contribute,
Mhm.
and that I believing in myself and like investing in my own development was going to be the one thing that no one could ever take away from me,
Mhm.
right? Regardless of where I
Yes.
went, that the value in that was like priceless, right?
Mhm.
And so I love this idea of thinking about like the system and having sort of like a change, because I think there's so many systems out there professionally that need to be infused with new ways of thinking, new ideas, innovation,
Yeah.
and not just doing the same old thing.
Yeah. Well, and that's like part of what, like your work has inspired me over time. And I recently watched one of my favorite shows, Abstracts, and you and I need to meet Neri Oxman. She's some of the world's biggest questions, right?
Yeah.
And she so eloquently put it that to think big, we had to think small.
Hmm.
And it's like when I see your work, you're like, it's it, and that's what's so like kind of constantly blows me away when you talk to all these people and on the startup journey, talking to all these, people at these high levels, and it's always the simplest
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
And it's like you're working with individual families. You talk like your work is about understanding one person's journey,
Hmm.
one person's trauma, one person like you, and then you fill in all of the gaps. And it's like to figure out
Yeah.
what that individual system is gonna need to function better or to
Yeah.
get like back on track, right?
It's the whole reason I became a social worker. And so when you think about working like with one-on-one with someone, and maybe like this is a parallel is working with a client directly, and you're providing this experience to help them be their best version of themselves, like grow whatever beauty that they have inside, or open it or crack it, or allow them to be themselves. Like whenever I think about like
Or just like
the
sharing the moment of being present in beauty,
Yeah.
right? Sometimes it's like it's not always like we're not giving people the power. Sometimes it's just like when you go walk in a garden with somebody, neither of you are creating that. You're just witnessing it together, but it's better shared.
Yeah.
And it's similar, like because I feel like that's also an important point. Is like it's not our job to sometimes we get the gift and the permission to do this for people to like evoke this beauty out of this person.
Yeah.
They already had it.
They already had it.
And when
Yeah.
they walk in the door, even in their worst days, we're not like, yes, we help people transform, but we are not granting them this beauty, and I
No.
think sometimes that message gets like
No.
confused.
It's like it's a way to sort of get connected to yourself, right? Like when I think about times that I've, my hair done, makeup done, anything like that, it's connecting to a part of me that maybe I've been a little disconnected. So it's like a conduit. And social work is very similar because you're providing a space. It's an invitation into that space, and helping a person sort of sift through what it is that they would like for their lives, right? What it is that they would like to see and do. And there's a lot of really leaning into creating a space where people feel empowered to make choices for themselves. And I don't know, providing options so that people have choice, right? And so that choice is important.
Oh my God, my brain is clicking right now because it's like, this is the reason, like, the stereotypical reaction to when people are like, oh, you do social work, they think that you're the like the rule, what's the word, like the punisher, or you're like, you're not doing this right, and
Yeah,
we're cracking down.
enforcer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And people think that beauty is superficial, where we're telling you how you're supposed to look and you're
Yeah.
in or you're out.
Yeah.
And which, like, it exists, but that's
Mhm.
not what it is.
Exactly. And it's sometimes hard to explain to people that there are elements of beauty that tell people kind of here's desirable for, like, haircuts for 2023.
Mhm.
The same with social worker, like here's a desirable way maybe for you to parent, or to raise your kids, or or how to take care of yourself, self-care, right? Whatever. There's always an element of that. But at the end of the day, the work is about creating a space for a person to choose for themselves, kind of from a menu of options that they have available. And sometimes that choice is not to change or not to do anything and just kind of do the same thing, but it's an informed choice.
Mhm.
And so you provide a space. And so whether you're working with an individual or family, or an organization, it's the same thing. So, like, I currently am in a leadership role now, and I have a lot of people coming to me and saying, we need you to fix this, these things are broken. And part of my role is really just to create a space to listen deeply, to understand from their point of view what it is that they're hoping to gain and get from being in this environment that we work in together, serving children and families, and then trying to take one small step towards what would be a better reality for all of us in this work together, where we are able to stay connected to the passion of the work that we're doing and continue to grow and not feel stagnant or not feel left behind or stuck, right? No one wants to feel stuck in their work that they originally came to with a lot of passion.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of overlap there
Yeah.
when you think about it.
Yeah. And there's a lot of overlap just because it's like working with the public and it's messy.
Yeah.
So it's like and it's intimate, like the work that we do in beauty, while like creating systems changes is hard because you're in a process of not everyone's waking up to the undoing of the old system at the same time. And that's messy. And then there's people that are receiving the old, are comfortable with the old system. And so they don't want to accept the new system that the new people are working in.
Yep.
So there's just always multiple parts in motion.
Yeah.
And you're always like, oh, this is where I actually learned about this in a marketing class, where it's like problem aware, like you're speaking to different people. So you could be selling, if you're like, these bananas have like this new, like, I don't know, like supplement that we didn't know existed or something. And it's like, if people hadn't heard about this yet, you have to start with a different message. But if people are now aware of this new thing, like, then you can start selling them right about the new banana, right?
Yeah.
But if it's like, so there's always, I think there was like 4 different categories.
Yeah.
And that was such a helpful tool to just communication in general, and even like consultations in beauty, but also thinking about like, when you're immersed in a world and you're immersed in the new system or the new change or the direction you want to be going, it's easy to pair up and just be surrounded with, like-minded people.
Yeah.
But then you have to remember that when you meet people that are maybe at the first step but not the fourth version of awareness, you have to meet them there.
Yeah.
You can't just be like, why aren't you getting on the bus with us?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I feel like I have that conversation every day, Mary Alice. So in social work, we call it starting where the client is. And it is literally that very thing of meeting people where they're at without judgment.
It's very hard.
It is very hard. It is so hard, especially when you're an evolved being. I'm just joking. But it's hard.
We're evolving.
We are evolving. We're all evolving. Yeah. But it's so hard to meet people where they're at and to come with empathy and compassion and just sort of be in it. And a lot of times in our workplaces, it's hard to do that with our colleagues, because we sort of just assume you should be on the bus, like you should get this already. Why don't you get this? And so that can come from a really judgmental place. And I'm saying that as a knowing person. I'm talking for myself. Like this is not me judging others. I'm like mostly judging myself because I do that, right?
Yeah, even in family systems. Like I'm like, yes, this is the struggle.
It is the struggle. I read something though yesterday that was so incredibly powerful to me, that the struggle is where the growth happens.
Mm,
And in struggle, great things happen. So like when you think about like a bud on a tree, the bud that cracks open on that tree is struggling to crack open. And in
mm,
that growth comes something beautiful.
mhm,
And so it was such a great thing for me to remember that in, as a result of struggle comes growth. There is no growth without struggle. Like you think
mm,
about working out, or you think about how we've like civil rights or any of the big movements that have happened in our society, they've all kind of come from struggle, some
mm.
agitation in our environment that has caused all of us to reimagine what should and could be. um, and so I've been trying to like stay connected to that these last few days since I've read that idea of the struggle is where growth occurs, because it's so easy when you're in a system to be like, gosh, why aren't people here yet? Why do we have people back here? Why don't we have people up here? Why don't they see, or why aren't they on board? And it's okay. It actually is good to have diverse, differing viewpoints about
Mm,
where you should be,
mhm.
because out of that diversity comes real, like, really cool innovation and really
Yeah.
cool ideas.
Yes.
So,
I think that, yeah, that's so powerful because it's also like in along the journey too, it's like okay to, and I mean, you've watched me in so many steps of this in my career of like it's okay to keep moving to get to a place where you feel safe with the community or like the people and the thought and the mindset that
mhm,
they're in. It doesn't mean that you have to stay in a place and struggle there.
no,
It means like there's the struggle doesn't go away just because one part is working.
no.
Like, and it's okay to work in a place where you feel supported and maybe
Mhm.
like-minded perspectives, and then there's still plenty of struggle in the world.
There is. That's true, right? Like, so you should never feel like you have to stay like in an unsafe place or
Or
a
a
place
job
that's
or
a job that you feel trapped,
relationship.
relationship. Yeah, absolutely no. Because then you're not really thinking about like what's best for you. I think the thing that I worry about sometimes for myself and for other people is that this idea that if I just don't have any struggle or strife in my life, I'm okay, right?
Mhm.
That's really kind of the definition of being numb and checked out in your life. Like there's always going to be just some agitation, something around you that propels you to the next level or propels you in the direction or helps you grow in the way that you want to grow. It does not mean, though, staying in something that's really abusive or unhealthy. And so I
Yeah, we're
hope,
normalizing struggle.
yeah,
It's like you yeah, and actually it's so beneficial to get to a place where figure out which part you need the struggle to, to overcome that struggle.
yeah,
So then you can work on other things that are more like, because struggle can still feel impactful and
mhm,
empowering. Like struggling to, double your income is a great struggle.
yeah,
Struggling to keep your mental health because you have coworkers that are nasty. No,
yeah,
not a
yeah.
great struggle.
Absolutely, right? I mean, and maybe the struggle in that is how do I find my way out of this not great environment into a different environment where I'm still going to be able to continue to grow?
Yeah.
And I think that's like the thing too, like when you're building a new skill, that can be a struggle, right? Like I do art as part of my self-care. Self-care is kind of a cliche word these days, but part of like what keeps
It's
me
part of
feeling
your
grounded,
being.
my
Yes.
being, yeah. And when I try some new technique, there's a struggle in that. I'm always like, dang, how do they do this? I don't know how to do this. So then I watch a bunch of YouTube videos or I get online and I look it up and I try to figure it out, right? That's a struggle, right?
Mhm.
So struggle is definitely not being in an unsafe place or a place that isn't good for your mental health or your wellness. But it's a place where you feel, just like the push to do different or
Yeah,
better,
and supported in taking on challenges.
Yeah.
Like that's a new way to see struggle where I feel like the old beauty story was like, well, it was just kind of like this. Yeah, I mean, even with apprenticeships, right? This is like
Yeah.
part of the motivation that made me kind of reverse engineer this process because I'm like, why are we telling young people that they have to just struggle for 5 years because everybody else had to, and that's what apprenticeships are, and you just got to pay your dues and
Yeah.
do your time, and it's like, for what? We don't even know if they're going to make it out of the 5 years of apprenticeships.
We have the same thing in the field of social work, Mary Alice. There's this like mindset that somehow if you weren't in the worst of the worst with the worst of the worst, that somehow you didn't get your chops or that you haven't struggled enough. And I think that's such an unhealthy and awful way. Like lifting people up actually, for me, lifting up new professionals feels so rewarding. Helping someone find education or a new skill
Mhm.
in their first year on the job
Mhm.
is so satisfying because I feel like then I get to impart part of what I know or what I am able to offer in
Mhm.
someone else's growth journey,
Yes.
right? And so when we think about like these unspoken rules about no, you've got to just suffer for the first 2 years on the job, or it's like, who made that up? Like, whose rule is that? And can that rule just go away and be
Mhm.
broken? That's the part where staying curious
Mhm.
is such a good, healthy thing
Yeah.
because then you're cracking open to possibility and thinking of things in a new way.
Yeah, and it's I mean, it goes back to the family system thing, and I think Brene Brown talks about that, and it's okay, like, so I mean, and we see this all the time, right? Like the audacity of these young people to just have the expressway to great lives. Like I see it with like my like older family generations looking
Yeah.
at me doing certain things, and then I see me looking at younger people, and I'm like, what? You guys didn't have to wear blue eyeshadow, and you have filters, and you have all this. You have YouTube to do your makeup, right? What? Like,
Yeah.
there's always going to be progression. That is
Yeah.
actually how progression works.
Hmm.
And it's okay to be triggered by that. And it's
Yeah.
okay to be like, damn, I wish I had this.
Yeah.
And when Brene Brown, and I forget which Netflix she talks about, or which book, but she talks about like, and the art of being fluid and progression is being able, like if your child comes to you and said, hey, this was not okay, just
Yeah.
be like, oh, let's think about that. Let me be
Yeah.
curious. Like back to your point about curiosity, it's like saying, okay, I wish we had done that better, or how could we have done that better?
Yeah.
Instead of being like, well, you didn't know what it was like. We had to walk uphill both ways. It's like that.
Yeah.
It's okay to feel that internally, but that can't be the outcome.
Yeah.
Because then there's always like, even if someone gets the expressway and you become their apprentice and you get to be around all these cool young people,
Mhm.
like yeah.
There's so many things in that to unpack, but I think about this though, like the unspoken rules that we all grow up with, and I think there's so many of them. I find myself triggered sometimes when I'm interviewing new employees and they say things like, well, what's the starting salary? Here's how much I think I should be paid. And I have a moment of like, wow,
Audacity.
you are just brazen. Like, and then I immediately think, damn, I've never felt
Yes.
bold enough to do that. And I wish I had. I wish
Yes.
I had, right?
Yeah.
And so if you can tap into why you're having that sort of trigger feeling, I think it's really important to know, because it's not so much that I think that they shouldn't have asked that question. It's more
Mhm.
like,
It's like
shoot, the world has evolved to a place where women feel empowered to ask for what they're
yes,
worth. Thank God.
yes, yes, and
It's
it
good.
can kind of become like a game of, it's like your own like internal truth or dare. Because I'm like, ooh, what if I have audacity to do this kind of
Yeah.
thing, and then I dare myself to try to do similar things, or
Yeah.
push myself in a way that I'm like, oh, I'm uncomfortable with how empowered this person is around that. How could
Yeah.
I act on that this week for myself?
It's, and when you think about like families, we also have like things in family systems where we have boundaries, right? So maybe some of those boundaries have been created for us by our parents, or we have, boundaries between siblings. We have necessary need for boundaries in the workplace too, right? Like, so like, this is not okay for me, or this is something that I'm not willing or able to do, or here's what I'm willing to give, but I'm not able to do ABC, right?
Mhm.
And so being able to have good boundaries and being able to articulate what's okay with you or not okay with you. It's a skill because you want to be able to say it in a way that the other person can hear, but you also have to be clear. And that's another thing that Brené Brown says quite a bit, which is clear is kind. It's okay to be clear about your boundaries. It's okay to say, this is what I expect, or this is what I don't expect. So an
Yes.
employer can do that
Yes.
as long as it's clear and it's kind.
Yes.
Employee can do that as long as it's clear and it's kind, right?
Yes.
And you are setting the boundaries of how you want that relationship to be. A lot of us grew up in families that maybe had a lot of blurred boundaries, or the parents just said, this is how it is and this is how it always will be. And we maybe didn't develop that skill or that voice to be able to advocate for ourselves. But I think we're seeing with the new generation, man, they are the fiercest self-advocates out there. And that is growth. That is progress. I think
and we
it's
all
a
help
beautiful
them.
thing.
That's the
We
thing,
did.
is that when you understand system changes, it didn't just happen. They didn't just pop out of the womb and pop, like, we taught them these micro things. Even the movies that they watched,
Yeah.
the girls that I have watched do their little baby bob haircuts, and now they're preteens, they watched, the Disney movies they were watching. They literally were talking to their mom once, and they were like confused when they watched it was a black and white Christmas movie, but anyway, the woman never ends up getting married, and it's like this really sad moment in the movie, and they were like, why is she sad?
Yeah.
Because they didn't have the same message that you have to be married to be like successful woman. They literally didn't have that message. And it's like so cool to see those little snippets of of just like complete different deliveries that they experienced.
It is, and it is progress. And I think that we're seeing that a lot, like just in the world, in our society, in our communities, and in our workplaces, where, people, especially in the pandemic, right? I mean, we're on the tail end of a pandemic. It's not over, in my opinion. I still see a lot of follow-up from it. But when you think about being at the height of the pandemic, people have kind of been coming out on this other side saying, I deserve more. I deserve better.
And why? They had time to question.
They did. Everyone in the world was able to take a pause and really evaluate their lives. And we saw and we see a lot of people changing professions and leaving careers and following their dreams, right? And so I think we're at the precipice of something that we've never really seen before in the world, of a group of people that have a really strong voice, that are really empowered and know their worth. And it's kind of a neat thing to watch.
Oh, it's so exciting. It gets me so stoked. And it's like you speaking about boundaries, one thing that, yes, of course, boundaries are so crucial in implementing new ideas and concepts and systems and individual workplaces, and even personal boundaries in one-on-one relationships, whether it's the client or the mentor or whatever. And one thing that, over the course of all these conversations since before the pandemic until now, as we're looking for these new places, kind of like what we were talking about before, instead of just going to like what's familiar, or like you have this preset of like, oh, well, in salon culture, we do this, or in salon culture, like this feels good because we recognize things that feel familiar. And so a way to snap out of that is to get clear about what are the new changes you're seeking, whether it doesn't even have to be space. It could be adding new employees. It can be adding, maybe you're going to a completely new culture, because that's the other part that's challenging about the beauty industry and everywhere, is like the beauty industry is made up of many, many, many tiny beauty industries.
Yes.
So like the Dallas beauty industry is different than the New York beauty industry and the London industry, and they all influence each other.
Yeah.
So when you're moving to a new place, it is a completely different experience. And so having a set of boundaries, or like a set of like, here's how I want to work, here's how I want to be treated. And like one of my like aha moments is like when you ask people what their plan for dealing with conflict is, and they don't have one, or they say things like on the hiring posts, it's like, no drama, we don't do drama here. That's them outing themselves and saying, we don't have a plan to deal with conflict. And conflict doesn't mean, they're also kind of gaslighting and saying, don't talk about that because that means you're bringing it.
Mm-hmm.
And conflict is actually something in every family system
Yeah,
you have to build into the problem solving.
it's so true. And so you do have to have a plan for conflict. You kind of have to have like a process for conflict. And you're going to have conflict. You're going to have conflict in your workplace. You're going to have conflict with colleagues. And how do we want, or what do we value about our relationships in this workplace? The same way we would in a family. Like, what's the value? And then, like, so in some families, you're going to see folks that will always say, like, we can go to bed angry, but if we cause someone else pain in this family, we have to own it and we have to apologize and we have to repair it, right? Like, that's what we value, is repairing it.
Mm.
And so you may have conflict in a workplace. I think it's totally acceptable to ask what is the plan for conflict? Like, what, if we have a disagreement, what are we going to do?
Yeah,
What do
and
we expect of one
even,
another?
like in the beauty industry, it's so like, I mean, I'm very hopeful and optimistic. I know there are plenty of people that are working on this already and have better systems,
Yeah,
but the majority, it's so fragile that wouldn't even be able to answer who is the person that would be dealing with the conflict.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
the owners try to pass it off to the manager, who's really just like the top earning stylist and not really have manager skills or
Yeah,
expectations. And it just gets kind of passed around until the whole place has dealt with it
yeah.
in a form of toxicity.
Yeah. And so one of the things is such a fascinating idea or topic for me, and something that I'm working on in my own work life, is setting clear expectations of what we expect of one another based on a set of values. So like, if my workplace had a value of respect and open communication, right?
Yeah.
Behaviorally, what does that look like? What does respect look like? What is open communication? So that you can describe it to people when you're onboarding them into your work environment, so that they know very clearly, kindly, what's expected behaviorally. So like, if I'm going to have a disagreement with you in the workplace because, I don't know, I took some of your products and I didn't tell you, and I didn't replace them, or what, I don't know what would be in the beauty industry, but like in our world, it would be, you borrowed my headset, you took my paper,
Yeah.
my pen, you left a bunch of crap in the shared kitchen.
Yeah.
Those would be things in my workplace. And how are we going to deal? Well, if someone is concerned about that, then they have an obligation to go to that other person and say, hey, so this is upsetting me here. I'm wondering if we could figure out a different way forward. And then you work through it through open communication.
Mm-hmm.
And what's respect? Not talking about people behind their backs, right? Respect would be not gossiping in the workplace.
Yes.
Respect would be when you think management's made a really bad decision, instead of just saying, management, you suck, you'd go to the manager and say, I'm not understanding why this decision got made. Could you help me understand? Because I don't get it, right? And I would like to understand.
Mm-hmm.
That's respectful. That's open communication. So I think workplaces, like families, when we have clear understanding of how we're going to be with one another, how we want to be in relationship with one another, how we want to be connected to one another, then people are more likely to be successful in those environments and to feel connected to the greater vision of what it is you're trying to accomplish.
Yes. And that just brings, like, then people are able to be more proactive because they understand the steps of, like, when something does go wrong, or if there is like because it's not like everyone has to be prepared, because I think that's what people get so afraid of when they hear conflict. They're like, they think that you have to give them a rundown of every scenario that could possibly happen, and like, no. Yeah, it's about the values. It's about knowing that you're owning a leadership role and you're saying, welcome to this space, here's how we're going to hold each other so that we can continue to work and do the complex things that we all are doing, because we're all bringing strangers into a space.
That's
right.
There's
already like many variables there.
There are, and the only way we get through it is actually being able to talk about it. And I think the thing that people are most worried about is, like, how do you talk about that? Like, no one ever taught me how to talk about that. And this is where the work by Brene Brown kind of comes into play, this idea of being vulnerable. There are safe people to be vulnerable with and not safe people to be vulnerable with, but vulnerability is being brave and courageous, right? It's asking the uncomfortable question. So it doesn't have to be you like lying out your life like heart on the table for other people to trample on, but it might be as brave as asking like a courageous conversation or question to your boss about why are things the way that they are. The other thing about having your values clear in your work environment and some behavioral expectations. So this doesn't mean like giving, your employees like a laundry list of behaviors that you want them to do, but just a few examples is that if a person says, "Oh, that's how you are here," they get the option to self-select out before they've gone into that environment and are fighting against the norm of that culture because they're like, why is it done this way here? Right. They go, oh, that's what this salon is about, or that's what this office or this agency is about. Okay, that's not really for me. And then they move on to an environment that might be better suited to what they have or what they want to bring. And I know some of the best like mentors I've had in my life are people who have influenced me over the years have been people that have said, you have the choice to not be in that any longer. And sometimes you don't feel like you do. Like it's scary to step out of a job, or it's scary to leave a place that you feel really passionate about the work, but you're like, man, this is not working for me anymore. But the truth is that you have the choice to move into something else. So when an organization or industry creates a set of values, shared values, they're clear about what behaviorally that looks like, and then all of us hold each other accountable to that, that is likely to be a much more positive work environment. It doesn't mean you're not going to have conflict though. But you'll have a pathway for how to work through conflict.
Yes, exactly. Like there's no foolproof. There's still going to be all these variables and people. And it's like, especially in a space where we're sharing airspace. And that's something that I noticed after many years of asking why of certain things, like like, why is this happening here, not in this industry or not in this workplace, or and that was one of the really big aha moments for me too. It's one of the things that makes salons and barbershops and certain places so beautiful when things are in harmony. Like there's nothing like an amazing barbershop, right? There's nothing like a like harmonious, like the conversations are flowing moment in a salon where it's this mix of people, new ideas. Like that's actually like where the word salon came from, was when people used to gather to have in private, to have kind of unruly conversations about certain topics, and you would have to get dressed up, and it was like this intentional gathering. And that's like, so that was the so there's beauty in that. But when we're sharing airspace over a long period of time, like years, with someone who, like, compared to being in an office, if someone has completely different life views than you, and you guys really jive together on a project. But if you're in, a lawyer's office, or I don't like, that's just my go-to office. Like any office. That's just like work culture, that you're not like spewing your personal life everywhere. Because that makes work relationships, professional relationships, unsustainable. Because it's like, we can jive and work together on this project in this like really close-knit way where we talk every day. But when you're sitting here talking about something that really bothers me, but that's my personal belief, or maybe we're different religions, or maybe this, like, and it's not about avoid these subjects. It's about what you just said of like, how do you create a container so that sustainability can exist? Because when you've got 5 people in your airspace, everyone's talking about different parts of their life, just wild in all the time, that's a huge part of beauty burnout.
Well, and then you take in the consumers and their stories that they're sharing out loud in the airspace as well, which you don't really have control or containment of, because people are going to share their stories,
if you're prompting it from one person is prompting it, and then it's like it's a fascinating thing to watch. And I learned so much about people from working in salon spaces. But it's like, could you imagine being at your dentist and your dental hygienist starts talking about some things that you've heard at the salons, and then the next chair over here no, that doesn't happen.
No, it does not. I mean, mostly probably because you have things in your mouth, but I totally get what you're saying.
Yeah.
But that's the thing is like, so like my salon experience as a consumer have very much been, you can tell when people are harmonious, and they might kid each other a little bit, or you could, like maybe not everyone fully gets along, but you can tell that they're all in it together and they are gelling, right?
Right.
And then when you're in an environment when that does not exist, it's such an uncomfortable experience, especially for someone like me, because I'm a feeler, I'm an empath, and I can feel tension. I can pick up on it in a room, and I read a lot of body language through my line of work. And so when you're in an environment like that, you go, whoa, I'm not coming back to this environment,
Yeah,
right?
when you're
Because
gonna hold captive because you have
yeah,
foils in your hair.
because you have foils in your hair, right?
And
So
you're like, I'm here, but I am not involved, but I am involved because
And-
I'm here.
and that's like that's one of the values, right? Like whoever's leading that salon environment, if the value is the consumers of what we offer to people, we want them to walk away with a positive experience. So
Yeah.
that means maybe we're not going to engage in much banter that crosses this particular line, right? Or whatever that might be.
Yeah, and it's like, it doesn't even matter what okay, here's a perfect example. In Denver, when I lived there, there was a place called Two Twisted Marios. It's a pizza place. And they are only open from like, I don't know, 11 to 4 a.m. or something. So they were like specifically for the bar crowds.
Yeah.
In their menu, they have like offensive titles on the pizza. Like that was their brand. They're saying, here's how we do things here.
Yeah.
So it's not saying like, don't do this, do that, don't do this.
No.
If you want to cuss all day and you want to be like Two Twisted Marios, where they're like, they will literally be like, what the fuck do you want when you come order? And there would be all these drunk people. So it's hilarious because sometimes the drunk people didn't realize that was the culture, and they'd be like, why are you so mad, man? And then they'd realize like, this is the culture of this place. Because they knew they were going to be dealing with drunk people, so they didn't want to have to be like trying to be polite. They were just like, here's how we need to work.
Yeah.
Here's what we're gonna do. Here's our brand. So it's like, if that's what you're gonna do, choose the path and make it really clear. Be like, in this salon, we do all of these things, or we're okay with this. We're okay with whatever it is. So that, just like you said earlier, those people can find you, or those people can self-select out.
Yeah.
And that the people coming into this space aren't surprised.
And the cool thing is that the world, there's room for pretty much all of it, unless you're like harming individuals or harming children, right? Like those are some taboos in our society, but if your brand is to reclaim like whatever, right? There's space in the world for that, right? And again, I think, there's a few boundaries that we know we shouldn't cross. But in general, I mean, I think it's like another food analogy is biscuit bitch in Seattle, right? That, and there, I've been in that establishment I think it's on 2nd Avenue in downtown Seattle. And I've had like people say, why do all the biscuits have bitch? Like, why bitch? And one of the people working behind the counter said, we're reclaiming this word. It's like a power word for us. Like this is a good thing for us. And the person who had asked that question got that, and it was fine, and it moved on. But you hear a lot of things like in the line while you're waiting for your delicious biscuit. And some people find the word bitch, offensive. And so they are trying to reclaim that word through delicious biscuits, and that's their brand. And so for the passerby who does not want to purvey of that, they have a choice to move down the street to go to some other breakfast joint, right? In Seattle. And it's the same with salons. It's the same with work environments and social work, right? Like when you're clear about your values, clear about what you're coalescing around, you articulate that and you let people know you have other options, then people are going to self-select into the environment that they want to be in. And it's important.
It goes back to the relational, like family structures or just systems where it's like, we're treating people how to treat us. And that's part of like the communication, the boundaries. It's like the same concept, but in just people to people, as far as like, I am okay with this. I'm not okay with you always being sarcastic to me. I am okay with you. And some people love that, even on dating apps, right? People will put it out there like, I love sarcasm, and that's part of like putting your version of collaboration out into the world.
Well, and I think the thing too with families like that I often think about is like not all families have like open communication and not all families had boundaries. And sometimes in our families, like everyone avoided conflict, right? And so the thing I always try to think about is like, what was my family experience? I just remain curious about that. And I try to be wary of any behavior where I might be replaying who I was as a kid in the work environment. And I can do that. I've done that before, right? Where I'm the firstborn. No,
Just free ride out of this.
Yeah.
Like, sir, you're exempt from that family patterns.
Yeah. I'm the firstborn. I'm used to sort of being in charge. I'm used to sort of like blazing the trail for my younger sibling. I'm used to being the one who got in trouble and then it being an easier path for him. I tend to be a leader in any work environment I go into. I tend to be outspoken. It's just who I was in my family system. And the thing I have to think about like in my work environment is, am I creating space for other people to have a voice, or am I just like taking over the room because that is what I'm used to doing, right?
Yeah, you're like, I know how to do this.
Yeah, I do. And I'll watch people and struggle and I'll watch them struggle to figure out how to problem solve. And in my head, I'm like, damn, I know how to do that. Like, I want to be the person who raises my hand first in class, and all of those things that I bring from my development growing up, I have to be wary about how it plays out in the work environment. Because if I'm not self-aware, then I could be doomed to repeat the patterns of behavior in other places that may not be healthy for my work environment. So being able to think about like who you were, how you were raised, how you interface with others, how you connect with others, and being thoughtful about that is helpful in finding the spots where you can blossom in your career.
Yeah. And I think that is it's such a big step. And it's also like none of us have arrived. And so it's not the point of like find the perfect place or find the perfect team. And even as someone, hosting or considering hosting or mentoring, whatever, I think that's one of the biggest fears, right? Is that where we're like, oh, well, I still have a lot of stuff to work through. And it's the same in relationships or families. Like, so many people are like undoing their old system and they're like, I have to fix this first. And sometimes maybe you do need to go on a relationship detox or whatever, or sometimes you need to build skill before you're ready to mentor. But it's also like, this is, and like we said earlier, an evolution of like, if you pick people that are willing to be around you while you're willing to go, it's just the willingness.
It is an openness, a willingness, a remaining curious. And the thing that the older I get, the more I realize like nobody actually has made it. No, there is no make it. There is no end destination. It is an ever going, ever evolving process of growth and trial and error and figuring it out along the way. And I think that's where that whole idea of, there's growth in the struggle, like, because there isn't like the movies where the guy runs the race and he smashes through the tape with his chest, it's like, oh, he made it. There is no make it in life. Like, I just don't know what that is. Like, we're all still just trying to find our way. I think the thing to think about though is like, who am I? What am I bringing to the table? What am I hoping for myself? Who is this other person? What, I would like to learn from them. Or if you're the person thinking about being that mentor or doing that education, saying, here's what I have to offer. I know just as much. I'm going to learn from anyone who comes on this journey with me as much as I'm going to teach. And so when you're able to understand that duplicity of like, you're a learner and a teacher all at the same time. And I know that just from my own experience, because on top of working with children and families and organizations, I teach. I teach social work, and the best courses that I've taught in my lifetime have been the ones I've learned the most from my students. And so, if you are considering stepping into a mentoring role, stay open to learning just as much as you're giving.
And don't wait to start. Like, that's the thing that is so, you can teach the person a few steps behind you. And that's what's so beautiful. And what lights me up about this whole concept is like, we are taking back this idea of like, you have to get to the top of the whatever, that now when you get to the top, you can be an educator. No, you can have just graduated hair school a year ago. And if you're a badass braider, teach someone how to braid,
Yeah.
and then learn the next skill. And then like we
Yeah.
have so many micro skills anyway, and micro learning is its
Yeah.
own podcast. But yeah, it's just that permission of like, it also creates the most engagement when you're learning. So then you're creating a more
Mhm.
presence and giving back to your life because you're more present in your work. You're
Yeah.
more curious about, oh, how could I be doing this better? And
It-
your clients benefit from that. So it's like,
They do.
it is this cool space holding experience when you're challenging yourself to show it for somebody else in this form.
It's so true, Mary Alice. I think whenever you have to like impart something that you you go through the steps, right? You go through the steps and it reinforces what you know. So it makes you stronger at the skill that you're imparting to another person. I know that from my own experience that I I get I get stronger through the gift of giving when I'm imparting anything that I have to share.
Mhm.
And I tell people all the time in my line of work, like brand new social workers or human service workers that come in, and they'll say, I haven't been here long enough to be training a new person. And I'm like, yeah, actually you have been, because look at how great you are at engaging families, or look at that incredible documentation that you did on this particular family situation. Or you have such a gentle way of talking to people about hard things.
Mm,
You could share that with other people and they could learn from what you have to offer,
yes.
right? And so I think that there's a lot of stuff in our own upbringings that makes us nervous about articulating or holding on to the value that we bring into the work. That again, back to this idea that somehow we have to be in that spot for 5 years or cross through some invisible ribbon of an award that we've done something right so many times in a row to bring value to someone else's experience. And a lot of that is rooted in our own childhoods about how we feel about ourselves and what we know and experience and bring to the table. And so just being awake, to think about that, right? Like I always remember as a kid feeling like I'm not the smartest in the room, and I don't want to actually like stand up and put myself out there. And then I got into college and I had some feedback from a mentor that was like, you may not be right about that answer, but what you have to say about that topic is really important. I want you to speak up in class next time. And so I got encouraged to share what I had, which was my point of view. Someone found value in that, right? It didn't have to be the instructor. It didn't have to be this, wizard at this topic. Someone just noticed that I had something to give. And so when you're able to notice that about yourself, it's so important. So it's, kind of stepping out of what you think you are into who you can be. That's
yes,
important.
yes, it's so important. I this is sort of a sidestep, but it keeps coming up where I'm thinking of like the other challenge of being in these social settings. Well, first of all, that's the same concept where like Steve Jobs implements that, the new learner. He would specifically take for old workers, like people that had been in the game, like knew the business, whatever. Then he'd bring a brand new person in on purpose.
Yeah.
Because sometimes their unencumberdness shakes things up, or it makes people think in a different way, or even what we were talking about with younger, like the audacity of new ideas where they're like, we could do this. What if we went to the moon? Like that helps ideas progress. That helps. It's just important. And so you're participating in an equation even by showing up and not knowing, and like not knowing or feeling like,
yes,
I have all the answers. You're still helping.
You absolutely are. And the importance of not knowing is such an incredible phenomena of being just fully in, I don't know, and it's okay. Or being open, really open. When you're in that not knowing stance, it's something that we do with our work with families, is have families teach us about themselves.
Wow.
So we might have a history written down in a file. We may have a referral from whomever we're working with that saying, here's what the family's dealing with. But we always talk about coming into that relationship with a not knowing stance so that the family can teach you from their perspective, because that's where the real work happens, is that when you're able to understand it from the lens of that family. And so not knowing is okay. It is so okay to be a learner, so okay to not know. It's a scary thing. You have to be courageous to kind of raise your hand and say, I don't understand, or I don't know, or I don't get how this connects. But that in that bravery is a lot of growth and goodness that comes from that. So
well, and even value, like thinking about with services, because I think that's also often a question of like, well, how do we know we're going to get value out of this session? Like when mentorship is so it's not transactional. It's not like you're giving me 4 muffins, right?
Yeah.
It's like, so, but also even in something transactional, how do you know they're going to like the muffins?
Yeah.
Like maybe they bought 4 muffins, they don't like them. Like that's still a transactional, like value add, value question, right? We don't.
You don't. And that's the scary part, right? Like, so it's trying something new. You may not like it. I mean, I remember I tried yoga and I loved it. And then I tried Tai Chi and I was like, I hate it.
Yeah.
And because it just was a different experience for me. And yes, I paid for it and I hated it. Right.
Yeah. And now
it's okay.
Now you value yoga more.
I do. I value yoga more.
Sometimes that is, and that's part of the bravery of showing up and being, vulnerable to those experiences where you're going to learn as a mentor, you're going to learn as a mentee who you want to learn from, what kind of work. But that is also a huge important part that we sort of borrowed from different systems like travel nursing or being a doctor. They want you to go and try being a pediatric. They want you to nurse, or I don't know the terms, but they want you to try on 5 different things at least so that you don't waste time getting into one, specializing it, and then being like, this is awful.
It's the same in social work, actually. You have a practicum where you have to try out skills in a setting, and it may end up in a practicum that you're like, I never want to work in that field of practice ever again. And you may end up going, oh my gosh, this is the perfect fit for me, right? That's what happened for me. I was in a practicum and I never would have selected it for myself, but it was the only one available because I had gotten signed up late, and I went into it kind of begrudgingly, like, oh, I'm going to hate this. Totally fell in love. And now here I am, like 25 years later in the field of child welfare, still in some way, shape, or form. Right. And so those experiences do help like shape and grow, and you learn just as much from the things you don't like as the things that you do.
Okay, so going back to the side step, that I want to wrap this up. I know we could talk for days, but
I know that's our skill though.
And we'll be back. We have more to say. But this is a thing of working with the public, and this is something that is like, you ask yourself as an entrepreneur, like, people say this, like, what lights you up and what breaks your heart. And one of the things that breaks my heart in the beauty industry is sometimes being a witness to things so intimately that most people in the space didn't know how to handle. And one time I learned a hard lesson where I was like, someone confided in me about someone in their life that was in this abusive relationship, and I was like, oh, well, you could do this, and you could do this, you could do this. And I had to learn this hard lesson that, like, you can't save everybody. And sometimes that it's inappropriate, or it changes now my relationship with the person in my chair. But sometimes if it's like happening in the salon, or if there's just so many walks of life that come into spaces, and I hope that by bringing more people together around shared values and clarity and more conversation, there will be more empowerment to deal with these kinds of things. But it's like there are structures, right? Like there's people that are what do you call it? Mandatory reporters. There's people that are, I mean, of course, there's hotlines and there's all these things, but it's not really. I think that in this new system change that will be adjusting, but it's like salons and barbershops aren't seen as these they're sort of seen as places that are unbounded
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes, and
Yeah.
that's part of why people will feel more comfortable than
Yeah.
telling their therapist, and they'll tell their
Yeah.
hairdresser, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like that's part of
Yeah.
the old toxic system, because that ends up burdening the
Mm-hmm.
providers and the system that's trying to hold a business.
Yeah.
And then also just the humans that have to feel all of these intense things all the time,
Yeah.
that actually might not be able to know how to do it. So yeah, what I mean, I know that this is like its own podcast also, but
Yeah.
like
It's a good point
that
though.
goes with the values, and like here's
Mm-hmm.
how we do things, or
Yeah.
having like conflict systems isn't just for the internal like coworkers, it's also for like if somebody comes
Yeah.
in and they like are
Mm-hmm.
domestic violence in front of you, what's the plan?
Yeah. Oh yeah. And it could happen, right?
Mhm.
Like it could easily happen. And so as a social worker, I am a mandated reporter, and I have an obligation when I'm working with clients in a professional way to do what's called a full disclosure, disclose, like, here's what I have to do if you share with me any of these items, right?
Mhm.
Abuse of a child, or violence, or harm to yourself or others. Like I have a process that I have to go through. But in a workplace like a salon, you're not mandated reporters, right? But you probably hear, and actually I know you hear some of people's, deepest situations
Mhm.
that are very personal in nature. And so, a couple of things that kind of come to mind is a leader of a salon, someone leading a salon may want to kind of set an expectation with the staff about when you're in those positions. It's not our place to tell people what to do, but it is our place to say, I'm worried about you and how can I help?
Mhm.
What do you need from me right now? What would be the best? And then that empowers a person to make choices for themselves.
Mhm.
And maybe they say, I wish I knew who to call for help. And then it would be okay to give them the number to the hotline, right?
Mhm.
Or to connect them to somebody in the community. But I think it's okay for people today to think, you know what, we are a pretty open society, and we talk about these things more openly than we ever have in the history of our society.
Yeah.
And having a plan or a path to know what to do when those things happen is okay to
Mhm.
know. I mean, who would have ever thunk that we were living in a world where we have our kids in schools preparing for active shooters, right?
Right.
We have that happening. And so I think it's okay for the beauty industry to evolve to a place where they empower people in that industry to say to the clients who are sharing deep things happening in their lives,
Mhm.
what do you need from me right now? How can I best help? I'm
Mhm.
worried about you.
Mhm.
That maintains connection and still allows people to be empowered
Mhm.
in the choices about their lives.
Yeah, and it's not, I mean, my mind is racing with just all of these other stories, because as I, have been exploring this, I often hear from people in my life in other states of like their stories with their beauty professional, like as the
Mhm.
client, the vice versa, right? So it's like even as a salon or lash artist or whatever kind of space you're holding, when we let these boundaries drop, say one person's ex-boyfriend shows up angry at this and nothing happens, like that's a perpetuating story where it's like this is a business, or a
Yeah.
where other people wouldn't just walk into a hospital to confront their ex
Yeah.
nurse, and sometimes they do, but like
And when they do, though,
there's
they have
repercussions.
security.
Yeah.
The security deals with it. And I know that for a fact because I've been in hospital settings when we've had an angry spouse come in and do something violent. And
there's
there's a
systems.
process, there's a system in place to deal with that. And
Yeah.
though all of those people don't necessarily deal with psychology or mandated reporting,
Right.
but they are literally like they've got a system in place to deal with that kind of thing, because they know violence that goes unaddressed could grow and it could get out of hand. And we wouldn't want that for anyone who's at a hospital, which is a place of healing.
Right.
So, and many things about the salon environment are healing,
Yeah.
right? People come to a salon environment to be able to share and heal and take care of themselves and nurture themselves. And or just get the same hairdo like me, celebrate,
Just feel good and
Yeah.
enjoy. Yeah. And
And
it's like if one person in the culture is breaking that safety seal, even if
yeah,
it's just like a invisible barrier,
yeah,
and strange things are happening or strange interactions are happening,
yeah.
then it breaks the seal.
Yeah, maybe a topic that we could have for another podcast, Mary Alice, is about how anyone, anywhere, at any time can be part of violence prevention and intimate
Yes.
partner violence,
Yeah.
because there is a whole school of thought out there. I did a lot of violence prevention work here in the state of Alaska, intimate partner violence. So we're talking relationships
Mhm.
violence. Around bystanders, active
Yeah.
bystanders, being able to intervene or whatnot. And there's a series of ways that you can do that. And I think that people should feel empowered to step in however they feel comfortable
Yeah.
to intervene when they see some violence happening or they're worried about somebody. Just the sheer act of telling someone, I'm worried about you, is a very powerful thing. And maybe in the moment that person will say, there's nothing to worry about, right? But you might have planted a seed for them to be thinking about the situation that they're in.
Yeah.
And that seed could grow into something.
Yeah. And, at Hair Voyage, this is part of our values because the industry is 98% women's and majority of it is small business owners. And these are real problems that people do know that there isn't like a whole system backing this individual small business. And so it does make us more vulnerable. And it's not doom and gloom. And these are real things to be more empowered about. And so that we can continue to take bigger risks and have more fun in different ways by eliminating these other challenges that we have to spend time dealing with or combating or like not knowing how we got here in the first place. It's like, and I mean, these are just like random examples, but there's a slew of real stories that we could actually, find better examples of, but that's the point.
It's kind of like, bartenders, right?
Yeah.
Bartenders also are places where people go and they unload their problems or talk about intimate things. And there's an entire school of thought around training bartenders to be able to intervene when they're seeing intimate partner violence occurring or the seeds of it occurring, to ensure that they're doing their part to help communities be safe. And so just because you work in the beauty industry doesn't mean that there isn't something that you could do. And also it allows you to feel empowered, because I think one of the hardest things out there in the world is when you're seeing something sad or violent happening to people that whether they be your clients or your colleagues, and you feel powerless to do anything to influence it, right?
Yeah, or you don't want now, or maybe now you're just like in it, you feel in it with them and it's affecting your working relationship with them because you're like dreading because you don't know that you're having anxiety about what the next story is going to be. Like, that's a real thing that many beauty professionals experience.
Absolutely.
And it's like, yes, there are ways to take our power back. There are ways to be kind. There are ways to support them. And it's not about shaming of like, no anybody's part in those stories. It's like, this is what happens with the public.
Yeah. And being able to have a boundary, right? A boundary that feels good for you and allows you to say, this is okay for us to be talking about or not okay to talk about, and being able to express that. And so, I appreciate you bringing that up, because I can see so clearly how being, like a consumer of beauty, right? Sitting in a chair, either with you or whomever, and sharing really personal things. Absolutely. And I never really thought of it from the other perspective that it could be burdensome, and not in a way that I wouldn't want to share, but that, man, because
if you were a different person that wasn't like attuned to consensual conversation or whatever, like absolutely. But I mean, I know you are always like already conscious of those things, but like just the idea of like how we all, when we are the client, which I think it's also why a great thing to practice being the client, is you forget that power of that vulnerability that you feel, and you just start telling your life story too.
Oh yeah, totally. I just I hadn't really thought about that though, but I'm a person though that happens to sometimes, like in the grocery
Right.
store or randomly, like at Home Depot, just someone out of the blue will say something to me, or they'll just start talking to me. And then all of a sudden I know a lot about their family, haven't even asked a question yet. And, I just have that, I don't know. I've got that face, maybe. I'm not sure what it is, but
It's
people
the
in bars
aura.
love me. I end up learning a lot about people. And maybe it's because I just listen. I don't know. And maybe that's the quality of a great beauty professional is that you do a lot of listening, and you seek to, like, well, tell me about that. What was that like? How was that? It's a beautiful thing that beauty professionals do. I know I've benefited from that, like the cathartic nature of being in the chair. It has felt great. And then I also walk out with like great hair.
Yeah, exactly. And you're like, I'm a new woman.
I
have a
am.
new plan.
A lot of power in that chair for sure.
Yeah.
And a lot of things that happen in that environment. So when we've been talking about this topic of kind of like the overlap of like systems and family systems and what that looks like in the workplace, like there is a lot of connection, right? Like, and I think it all boils down to this idea again that we are hardwired for connection and relationship, and so how do we do that kind of and try to stay the, closest version of our true selves and enter into that with intention,
It's a beautiful desire. I'm glad we're hardwired for that.
Me too. Thanks for having me.
Yes, thank you so much for all the wisdom and taking the time to just be in this deep dive with me.
You're welcome. It's great.